everyone. Cool, a little bit of difficulty getting the mic on, but here we are. I am so excited to be here in front of this group of amazing women. So thank you for all being here with me. Last year when we did Women in Product, I had just given birth, and I was so bummed out to miss this event. So I'm really beyond excited to be a part of the next generation of people who are changing the face of tech. So as Fiji mentioned, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, which is how we as builders think about framing up the work that we do and what it means to go out there and build a great product. So I want to talk a little bit about a framework that we use at Facebook, the 3 questions that we try and ask ourselves in every step of the product development process. So the first question is the most important, and that is, what people problem are we trying to solve? And I underline the word people because I think that's the operative word. Of course, when we're going out and we're actually building a product, we're trying to solve a problem. But do we truly understand the audience who we're building and designing for? Do we truly understand what their needs and wants and desires are? And a good people problem statement, which is the outcome of asking this question, actually has a few properties, and they seem really simple, but in my experience, they're actually a little bit hard to get right. The first is that it really should be human and simple and straightforward. And for a long time, this is kind of a mistake that we made in a lot of our product development. We would say things like, we're trying to connect the social graph. And if you actually go out and you talk to a person on the street, they don't know what that means. They don't know what connecting the social graph means, They don't know what words like optimize or CTR or a lot of the jargon that we use to talk about our work, they don't know what that means. And so a good people problem statement should actually be simple and human. You should be able to go and talk to someone, who doesn't work in tech and say, this is the problem that I'm trying to solve for this group of people, and it should make sense. The second quality is that it really should be solutions agnostic. How many of you guys have been in a brainstorming session when someone says, we should build an app that does da-da-da-da-da, or we need a website that da-da-da-da-da. All of that starts to get at already the shape of the solution, which is it's an app, it's a website, it's this shape or that shape. And actually a good people problem statement stays away from that. It's actually just about what people want and the problem that they have, not actually anything about the solution itself. The third quality is that it's not about us, the builder, the team, the company, winning. And I find that it's actually also very hard for us to not talk about the work that we do, from the frame of reference of ourselves. How many times have our goals been framed in terms of, we need to be profitable, we need to generate revenue, we need to increase engagement, or we need to, drive up a CTR metric? Those aren't people problems. Those are company problems. Those are team problems. But they're not things that actually get at the heart of what people are talking about. Finally, or fourthly, I should say, a good people problem statement gets at the why. Right? It's not just people don't know how to sign up for groups. It's, well, why do people want to join groups in the first place? Are they looking to get support? Are they looking to find connection and get advice? And so it's sort of like peeling back the layers of the onion to get at what it is that people actually want, not just what the behavior is. And finally, a good people problem statement can be both functional, emotional, or social. Being bored on an airplane is a people problem. Feeling lonely on a Saturday night and not knowing what to do is a people problem. But I think that the core thing is, if we can get at what it is that we think is missing out there in the world, or what a true need of the people that we're designing and building for are, it will help the rest of our product development process go much better. I'll give you guys an example. A couple years ago, we built a product called Facebook Live. How many of you guys have heard of Facebook Live? Okay, cool. So the people problem statement that we started out with was really, I want to share spontaneously and authentically in the moment. So that was our sort of stake in the ground. It's what we said we wanted to go and do. Now, transitions us into the next question that we ask, which is, okay, so how do we know if this is a real problem? Because it's very easy to just kind of have an idea and then to back your way into, okay, my idea solves this particular problem. Well, is that a real problem? Is that a problem that a lot of people have? How do we know if that is? You know, it's sort of turning it back around where you're not starting with ideas and then trying to figure out what you're solving. You're starting with the needs and then developing ideas. And we can know through quantitative evidence. You know, we can look at numbers, we can look at behavior, we can track things, or we can look at things qualitatively. You know, how do we feel about it? How do people, our customers, what do they tell us? You know, what are we hearing on the ground? And the reason why I think real is such an operative word is because there's always going to be a million problems, right? Every time we do something, it's probably going to solve some problem. How do we know that this is the problem that's worth solving with our team's time, with our energy, you know, with our investment? How do we know this is actually, you know, the best prioritization of the thing that we need to solve? So going back to Facebook Live, we wanted to, you know, go and develop something that helps people share spontaneously and authentically in the moment. And actually, the reason why we went about this is because this is a thing that we heard from public figures and celebrities. So our partnerships team would go out and they would talk to, you know, public figures and celebrities like The Rock, and that's one of the things that we heard. They really want to figure out how to connect with fans. So we actually built Live for public figures first. But then, one of the things that we asked ourselves was, well, is this going to work for people who aren't public figures, for ordinary people like me and you and our friends and relatives and people all over the world? And we weren't really sure. So one of the things that we did was actually just try it out. You know, we had already built the technology, we had already built it for The Rock, so we just decided to, you know, open it up to internal employees and see what people did with it. And so people did a lot of creative things. You know, some people did Q&As and live Q&As and broadcast team meetings. You know, other folks took it out for like weekends and just sort of broadcast what they were doing. This is actually my husband and daughter, you know, when we took it out for a brunch. And then, you know, other colleagues decided to, you know, use it when they were doing a run and just to experience it out. And we got a bunch of feedback from people who were using it, and we felt like there was something there. You know, there was something that people really enjoyed about the experience of going live that was different than just taking a video and then uploading it afterwards. There's something about the interactivity and the feeling that you were sharing this experience with your friends. And when we launched it, you know, we wanted to track this really closely as well. And we saw people doing lots of really cool things. We saw Liz Cook, who's a tattoo artist, just live stream, you know, how she was doing it for people who maybe were thinking about getting a tattoo but weren't sure, were a little nervous about the process. A woman, Lena, actually live streamed getting married. Her father was, you know, in a hospital room and couldn't make the wedding, and this was a way for them to, you know, still have that live connection. And, you know, it was much more powerful than, again, recording the video and then sending it afterwards. And, you know, a lot of us continue to take it out and experience it with our family and friends. So that's the second question. How do we know this is a real problem? The third question is, how will we know if we've solved this problem? What will be different in the world if, you know, we waved a magic wand and then everything went perfectly? What's going to be different in 2 or 3 years? What's actually different about people's experiences, you know, or their mental models or their behavior? And actually answering this question way in advance of actually building anything or you know, the roadmap actually kicking off is really important. Because, you know, after we launch something, a lot of times we're just sort of like trying to read the tea leaves. It's like, did this work? Did it not? And you know, we can be biased to try and like see the good. But if you take a step back before you even start a project and you ask yourself, what would it look like for this to be wildly successful? It kind of helps clarify a lot of things down the road. And a huge part of this is setting, you know, measurable goals and metrics to kind of hold the teams accountable as we move along. So this is our people problem. I want to share spontaneously, authentically in the moment. What did we think would happen if we were going to be wildly successful? Well, the first thing is that we felt like people who went live would have a great experience. And it would be something that was valuable to them. And that meant that if they tried it, they would be like, yeah, that was awesome. I'd want to do it again. And so we would look at things like retention, right? That was a huge part of knowing that this product would be successful. Not how many people tried it, but how many people tried it and liked it enough to keep using it. And the second thing was, of course, like broadcasting, it's a two-way street, right? If you just, like, everyone broadcasts, but nobody watches, I don't think that this product is that valuable either. So on the other end, we wanted to make sure that if, the content that people were producing and live streaming was actually good, people would watch it, and more people would watch it, and they would also feel like that was a good experience. So those were the two things that we tracked. So that's the framework. It sounds pretty simple. What people problem are we trying to solve? How do we know if this is a real problem? And how do we know if we've solved the problem? But the other thing I want to just talk about is it isn't just like you do this and then you end and we're done. As we all know, building products is like a cycle, right? And so you build something, you put it out in the world, you learn something new, you go back to the people problem. You go back to asking yourself these three questions over and over again. So we put live out into the world, and very quickly we did learn there was a new people problem. So some people tried it and loved it and kept doing it. Other people tried it once and then they didn't just keep using it. And a lot of people watched a lot of live videos but never broadcast live themselves. Why was that? And it turns out it's scary to start broadcasting live. That was something that we heard from lots and lots of people who were kind of interested in doing it but hadn't actually pulled the trigger. Because it's sort of like being presented with a blank sheet of paper, where you're supposed to write the next great American novel, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to talk about? What if I make it full of myself? What if no one watches? All of these concerns. And so this is what then got us into the next cycle after we launched the initial version of Live. We started to ask ourselves, okay, so how do we solve this? How do we go and develop ideas that make it less scary to think about going live? And one of the ideas we came with was the idea of live themes. And so how this works is that you can go and open the camera and you can kind of swipe through and pick a bunch of kind of prompts or icebreakers. And that then, when you go live, there's something for you to talk about and you and the audience can kind of go back and forth. So this is an example of that. It's called This or That. You just get two prompts, would you rather live in a city or live in a farm, right? And you can see that this is like a theme that we can kind of continue. So the idea of developing live themes came out of the people problem that it was very, very, there was a high barrier to just getting started and going live. Another thing we heard when we talked to people was that it was easier to go live if you felt like you weren't the only one, And so Fiji and I actually did this once when we were hanging out with a bunch of our girlfriends. We went live and we sort of chatted with all of our friends, but it felt easier to do so because there were like a bunch of us. And so we can talk to each other, we can kind of like have a dynamic that wasn't just like me in front of the camera with a bunch of people who may or may not be watching. And that inspired an idea called Live With. And the purpose of Live With is that you can actually go live and then invite somebody else into the conversation. So it's sort of like you're having a conversation with them, which also makes it a little bit easier to not feel like you're alone and you're broadcasting. So these are some of the things that we're putting out there, experimenting, learning from. But the thing I want to end in is that this isn't like you ask the questions, you build your product, you're done. You just keep asking these things. You keep learning new things about what you're building and what it's and whether it's hit what it's supposed to try and do for people. And we keep learning. We keep iterating. There's a lot of posters at Facebook, but this is my favorite one, and it's I have a little version of it on my desk, and it's a reminder that as product builders, the journey is 1% finished. There's always new lessons to be learned, new people problems to discover, new work to iterate on to make our products great. But I think the best product work comes out of always being closely connected to the people that we're trying to develop for and understanding what they truly care about and what the problems that they have. So that's it. Thank you so much, and if this is helpful.